The plan was simple, deceptively simple. Four men clad in black from head to toe stood across the street from the First National Bank. Their names were Jack, Leo, Marcus, and Finn. Jack was the leader, his mind a sharp, calculating machine that saw angles no one else did. He checked his watch. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The moment had arrived. They moved as one, a dark shadow crossing the sunlit pavement. There was no hesitation in their steps. They were professionals, driven by a single purpose. The glass doors slid open and the cool air of the bank washed over them. The time for talking was over. The time for action had begun. Inside, the world slowed down. Jack raised his weapon, the command clear without a single word spoken. Everybody down! His voice was a low growl, a rumble of thunder that promised a storm. People dropped to the floor, a wave of fear rippling through the marble hall. Leo, the muscle, vaulted over the counter with surprising grace, his duffel bags ready. Marcus, the tech expert, was already at the main vault, his fingers dancing over a keypad, bypassing security systems that had cost millions. Finn stood guard at the door, his eyes scanning the street, a silent sentinel watching for the first sign of trouble. They worked with a chilling efficiency, a well-oiled machine built for one thing, taking what wasn't theirs. The vault door hissed open. A mountain of cash waited inside. Leo shoveled stacks of bills into the bags, his movements fast and precise. They had exactly 90 seconds before the silent alarm would trigger a police response. 70 seconds? 60? Marcus called out the time, his voice tense but steady. They had practiced this 100 times in an abandoned warehouse. Every second accounted for, every move choreographed. 40 seconds. The bags were full, heavy with the promise of a new life. Jack gave the signal. It was time to go. They moved back through the lobby, stepping over the frozen figures on the floor, their job almost done. They burst out of the bank's side entrance and into the alley where their getaway car, a black sedan with a souped-up engine, waited. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with each passing second. They were coming. Finn was already in the driver's seat, the engine roaring to life. Jack, Leo, and Marcus piled in, slamming the doors shut just as the first police car screeched around the corner. The chase was on. Finn stomped on the accelerator and the car lurched forward, tires screaming against the asphalt. They weaved through traffic, a black blur against the city's gridlock, leaving chaos in their wake. They had the money. Now, they just had to disappear. Dubai was a city built of glass and gold, a perfect place to become someone new. They arrived on a private jet, their faces changed by expert surgeons, their names replaced with new identities. The stolen millions were laundered, cleaned, and reinvested. Jack, now known as Mr. Caspian, bought a penthouse apartment that overlooked the entire city, its windows stretching from floor to ceiling. He traded his black gear for tailored suits and his tactical plans for stock market predictions. Leo owned a fleet of luxury sports cars, each one faster and more expensive than the last. Marcus built a tech company from the ground up, a legitimate front for his brilliant and still very illegal hacking skills. They lived like kings in a desert paradise. Their days were filled with yacht parties on the Persian Gulf, exclusive dinners at Skyline restaurants, and shopping sprees where price tags were meaningless. They had everything they had ever dreamed of, and more. The thrill of the heist was replaced by the thrill of immense wealth. They believed they had done it. They had beaten the system. The memories of the sirens and the screeching tires faded, becoming a distant echo from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. They were untouchable, hidden in plain sight, their past buried under a mountain of money. They were safe, or so they thought. But justice has a long memory. Back in their home country, a dedicated team of international law enforcement had been piecing together the puzzle. A single scorched wire from Marcus's vault device. A faint fingerprint lifted from the getaway car, a whisper from an informant about new players in Dubai's high society. The clues were small, almost insignificant on their own, but together they formed a trail. A highly specialized SWAT team was dispatched, operating in secret with the cooperation of the Dubai authorities. They watched the four men, documenting their routines, mapping their luxurious lives, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The end came swiftly and without warning. It was a clear Tuesday morning. Jack was sipping espresso on his balcony. Leo was at a private track racing a new Ferrari. Marcus was in a board meeting. Finn was by the pool of a five-star hotel. At precisely 10 o'clock in the morning, the teams moved in. Doors were kicked down. Guards were neutralized. Jack looked up from his coffee to see black-clad soldiers rappelling down the side of his skyscraper. In an instant, the dream was over. The life of luxury evaporated, replaced by the cold, hard reality of steel handcuffs and the grim faces of the men who had finally caught up to them. Their golden cage had been shattered. The trial was a media sensation, but the verdict was never in doubt. They were sentenced to the toughest federal prison in the country, a concrete fortress from which no one had ever escaped. The vibrant colors of Dubai were replaced by the dull gray of concrete walls and the endless monotony of prison life. The tailored suits were gone, swapped for orange jumpsuits. Their names were gone too, replaced by inmate numbers. For 4 long years, they lived in a world of clanging steel doors, shouting guards, and the ever-present shadow of the watchtowers. The years crawled by, each day a carbon copy of the one before. But inside Jack's mind, a new plan was forming. He was a planner, a strategist. A cage was just another problem to be solved. He studied the prison's routines, the guards' shift changes, the blind spots in the camera coverage. He observed the delivery trucks that came and went, the maintenance schedules for the ventilation systems, the exact timing of the lockdown sequences. He communicated with his team in coded messages during their brief moments in the exercise yard. Leo started working in the laundry, Marcus in the workshop, and Finn in the kitchen. Each man had a role to play in the impossible escape. Their chance came during a fierce winter storm. The wind howled and a thick blanket of snow muffled all sound, creating a perfect cover. The plan was set in motion. Marcus used a makeshift tool to short-circuit the electronic lock on their cell block during a power flicker caused by the storm. Leo used his strength to pry open a maintenance hatch in the laundry room, leading to a network of old service tunnels beneath the prison. Finn had managed to steal a guard's uniform and a key card, creating a vital window of opportunity. They moved through the darkness, their hearts pounding with a familiar, dangerous rhythm. They emerged from the tunnels into a deserted storage yard on the prison's perimeter. The storm was their ally, the swirling snow a curtain that hid them from the watchtowers. Using the stolen keycard, Finn unlocked a gate leading to the outer fence. Marcus disabled the perimeter alarms for exactly 60 seconds. It was just enough time. They scaled the final fence, the razor wire tearing at their clothes and hands, and dropped onto the frozen ground outside. They were free, but they were also fugitives with nothing to their name. They had escaped the walls, but now they faced a different kind of prison, a world where they were the most wanted men in the country. Freedom was cold and desperate. They were ghosts, with no money, no resources, and their faces plastered on every news channel. They hid in the shadows, moving from one forgotten corner of the city to another. The hunger for their old life, the power and the wealth gnawed at them. Jack knew they couldn't stay on the run forever. They needed a big score, one last job to fund their final disappearance. He found a target, a regional reserve bank, less famous than the giants in the city, but holding a vast amount of untraceable cash. It was risky. It was insane, but it was their only way out. The planning was rushed, fueled by desperation instead of patience. They acquired weapons from the criminal underworld and stole a nondescript van. There was no time for the meticulous rehearsals of their past. This time it was all instinct and adrenaline. They hit the bank in the middle of the day, their movements rougher, more violent than before. The heist was messy. An alarm was triggered almost immediately. They grabbed what they could, the bags of cash feeling heavier this time, burdened by the weight of their desperation. As they ran for the exit, the first sirens began to scream. They burst onto the street and into a nightmare. The police were already there, faster and more prepared than they had ever anticipated. A perimeter had been established. Dozens of officers armed with rifles and shotguns had taken cover behind their cars. "Drop your weapons! You are completely surrounded!" a voice boomed through a megaphone. There was no escape, no high-speed chase, no private jet waiting to fly them to paradise. They were trapped, caught between the bank they had just robbed and a wall of law enforcement. For a moment, nobody moved. The world held its breath. Jack looked at his crew. He saw the same grim understanding in their eyes. They would not go back to a cage. He raised his weapon. The decision was made. The street exploded in a storm of gunfire. The sound was deafening, a final, ferocious roar of defiance. The robbers fought with the ferocity of cornered animals, their shots echoing against the city buildings. But they were outmatched and outgunned. One by one, they fell. Leo, then Marcus, then Finn. Jack was the last one standing, firing until his weapon was empty. A final volley of shots rang out and he collapsed onto the pavement. The sirens faded, the smoke cleared, and the silence that followed was absolute. Their final showdown was over.